investment between the U.S. and East Africa. Let's now link up with our reporter Noah Kipkemboi, who is attending that event. Good afternoon to you, Noah. How is Kenya set to benefit from the summit as a host?
Good afternoon, Purity Musel. Indeed, it's very critical for us to understand where the country is right now and the need for us to be proactive in terms of getting investors into the Kenyan ecosystem. Now, we're just recovering from the heavy punches of COVID-19. Then there was another punch called the Russia-Ukraine war, which was a little bit difficult. Then we saw also a transition in government. We had elections actually, and thereafter a change in leadership, which was also another dicey situation that happened to go on very well. And now we have another blow called about the issues about demonstrations and whatnot. So all these, blows, as I call them, they do have an impact on the economy and the environment and that comfortability and the confidence to put your money in the Kenyan ecosystem. But that's why we have this particular summit, to make sure that the U.S. businesses are getting the opportunities that are here from the source. And at this particular moment, I'd like to have a conversation with Deborah Maloa, who's the Vice President, East and Central Africa, Coca-Cola. Deborah, thank you very much for joining us. I mean, from today's session so far, it's already 2 p.m. Closed any deals? What are the opportunities that are coming up in this discussion of investment by U.S. companies into the Kenyan ecosystem?
Now, as Coca-Cola, let me give you a bit of context about the role Coca-Cola plays within the East Africa economy. We have 10,000 employees, system employees in Coca-Cola. Our retail network, including small-scale farmers, by the way, is about 500,000 of micro and small, medium-sized enterprises. And then we serve a community of 300 million. So as Coca-Cola, we actually use our convening powers to unlock partnerships so that we can actually crack economic growth within the area. And we want to play a pole position in that role. Coca-Cola has been an Amcham member for over a decade. We have been strong participants in cracking new market solutions, accessing new markets, creative interventions, support in designing policy, engaging with government. So Coca-Cola plays a key role in creating those interventions. We also play a key role in job creation, whether it's within our value chain, as I called out, or even in initiatives such as Jamii Fem, which is one where we're targeting youth and women in order to build entrepreneurship skills for them. So we are embedded in creating resilient economies, and that is in line with our purpose to refresh the world and make a difference.
Definitely. The purpose of refreshing the world and making a difference. Because, I mean, you go to the deepest of villages and Coca-Cola is there. And I'm thinking about making this for other businesses, that particular model. I know we consume a lot of your products, so food is needed everywhere, drinks are needed everywhere. But looking at that formula, is it something that could be adopted with other potential companies from, overseas, US to be specific, and applied, in Kenya?
I mean, absolutely. We have always shared our model because we know it can create massive economic transformation. You are right. You will find Coca-Cola at the most remotest corner of our countries that we serve. And that is because of a vision where we once said Coca-Cola will be at arm's reach of everyone. But the power of that really, it means that Coca-Cola was actually, when we talk about the bottoms-up agenda, Coca-Cola always engaged with a retail network of micro and small, medium-sized entrepreneurs. That has always been our business model in order to extend reach across the countries. So the 500,000 MSMEs that we work with, we build their capability, we enable them to create jobs, it impacts livelihoods. So that is absolutely something, if many companies can use the same model, you can imagine the economic transformation that can create.
Yeah, incredible. The numbers are huge, and you've mentioned MSMEs. Thinking about the ecosystem that we're in, especially survivability of MSMEs. Yeah, I know you deal with retail especially, which most of them tend to survive, but survival rate of MSMEs is a little bit lower in our ecosystem. And now we are recovering from heavy punches, as I mentioned earlier. Looking at potential areas of investment, especially in the MSME sectors, what are those areas that other businesses could explore, and maybe Coca-Cola, of course, as you've mentioned, has explored already?
No, I mean, your point is valid about sometimes the fragility around MSMEs. And during the COVID pandemic, that magnified the scale of the problem. In Kenya, for example, about 46% of MSMEs actually shut down for a year. 92% of that had to really scale back their operations even when they opened up. What did we do as Coca-Cola? Again, in line with our purpose to refresh the world and make a difference, we initiated a program called Open Like Never Before. And we used our convening power to get partnerships on board with us. So that was AMREF and APSA. AMREF's role was to help our MSMEs get behind COVID protocols and train them around COVID protocols so they can get behind the business of opening up like never before. APSA was to provide financial support to get them up there. And we impacted over 18,000 MSMEs in that period of COVID in order to get them back to resilience. And we consistently do that. So for us, it's about how do you build capacity and capability to enable the micro and small, medium-sized enterprises to continue being resilient even in times of challenge.
Okay. You've mentioned you are one of the oldest members of Amcham. And honestly, looking at the business environment between the two countries, US and Kenya, are there areas, rough edges that we could smoothen to make, investment easier in Kenya?
No, I mean, what are the opportunities around enabling investment? Let me give an example. When we invest in Coca-Cola, say we invest in manufacturing, the impact of that is huge because then it will require us to have even more suppliers to bring in goods. And we're sourcing more and more locally. So that enables a whole network of local suppliers. And then it pushes into our distribution and retail network. And those are entrepreneurs. And the bigger we scale that, the more we're creating capacity and capability around the entrepreneurs. So the impact of creating jobs, livelihoods, and economic improvement is huge just with that very same model. But the areas of opportunity, and these are conversations we continue to have with our partners, our government stakeholders, and these are areas like predictable tax environment. That is a key area. The opportunity to collaborate more with private sector so that we can even support in designing policies which don't necessarily just impact Coca-Cola, but impact the whole ecosystem that we operate in, which the big one is the MSMEs. And then lastly, we look at areas like when you talk about customs and key trading bloc. We operate with East Africa Community, SADC, COMESA. How can we create business policies that are more harmonious, that you don't have to always have separate policies? Those are three areas that would make a fundamental difference in driving economic transformation.
I know, and Africa Continental Free Trade Area is poised to exactly make that work. But again, they say the foundation of that is these building blocks. You've mentioned the SADCs, the ESCs, being able to work harmoniously. Talk to me, what potential does the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement hold for the investment landscape, not only in Kenya, but Africa?
I mean, the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement has huge potential. Let me give an example. Think about the supply chain. Earlier on, you were referencing the shocks that happen on the global supply chain. First there was COVID, then there's a Ukraine war. And we can anticipate those type of shocks will continue to happen. And these are global supply chain shocks. Now, if we actually unlocked the Africa Free Trade Continental Agreement area here, you can imagine the impact that will create in terms of supply chain. We do not have to, we can create a supply chain even within ourselves. And that's one of the things we're really keen on. So we're actually building the capability and capacity, for example, of local farmers today. We're not waiting for it to happen. We're building the capability of farmers today so that they have a competitive advantage once we create the Continental Free Trade Area.
And for the government, I look at the budget, and budgets tend to grow always, which means we need to raise more revenue. From a government perspective, and from a revenue generation perspective, especially in taxes, other than the impact, the bottom-up effect that you've mentioned, in terms of taxes and companies investing in the local market, what will that portend for revenue stream for the country?
I mean, I can't speak on behalf of government about the use of taxes, etc. But the one thing I must commend is the collaboration in order to actually share our input in regarding policies, regulations, etc. And we've actually had great collaboration, government listening to private sector in terms of the opportunities around that space in order to actually trigger faster economic growth. So that's an area, that's a great example of when we collaborate in order to design and shape policies that can make a fundamental difference.
Okay, definitely. And as we finish up, the numbers, targets, are there any targets that are maybe in the short term or medium term that we need to be on the lookout for so that we can hold you accountable in terms of job creation? For example, this year, is Coca-Cola aiming to create 10,000 more jobs for Kenyan youth?
No, as I said, we've already got 500,000 micro and small enterprise businesses within our retail network. One of the next exciting projects that we're getting behind is called a vendor program, and that is one which we're actually looking at creating jobs on the vendor program, and this is how you actually, and this is a street vendor program. Exciting times. My encouragement is look out for that, but Coca-Cola will continue to play a great role in driving economic